Okay, I see that it's 1 o'clock here, so let's start the December 13th, 2022 Mag Street Committee meeting. Item number 1 is the call to order. Steph, would you please call the roll?
Absolutely, my pleasure. We'll start off alphabetical by last name. Grant Anderson. Charles Andrews.
Here.
Thank you. Keith Brown. Vice Chair Christo is here. Jerry Cooper. Maria Deeb.
Here.
Thank you. Nathan Domi.
Here.
Thank you. Keith Janaski. David Fabiano. Jennifer Jack. Kevin Lair.
Here.
Thank you. Ariane Larange. Paul Lopez. Jamie McCracken. Do we have anyone here from McDOT sitting in for Chair Macaluso? No one from McDOT. Okay, Brad Novacek.
Here. Present.
Thank you. Steve O'Brien.
Here.
Thank you. Dana Oswiani.
I'm here.
Thank you. Erman Pedrahita.
Here.
Thank you. Matt Reeg.
Present.
Thank you. Patrick Sage.
Here.
Thank you. Christopher Salas.
This is Ron Gritman for Chris Salas.
Ron, thank you. I got you. Raquel Schatz.
Here.
Thank you. Eric Stewart. Leticia Vargas.
Here.
Thank you. Christopher Wanamaker.
Here.
Thank you. And then I'm just going to go back through the top again real quick. Keith Brown.
Here.
Thank you. Jerry Cooper.
Here.
Thank you. Keith Drunaski. David Fabiano.
Here.
Thank you. Jennifer Jack. Ariane Larange. Paul Lopez. Or Jamie McCracken. Is there anyone that I missed during the roll call?
Grant Anderson.
Oh, Grant, thank you. Okay, Vice Chair Christo, we do have a quorum present.
Thank you. We have quorum, so this is the meeting of the Mag Street Committee is called to order. As a reminder, please mute your microphone to eliminate any feedback. You'll have the opportunity to raise your hand in the chat to be recognized, at which time you can unmute your microphone to talk. When you begin speaking, please state your name and your organization. Moving on to item number 2, call to the audience. Members of the public were asked to submit written comments related to this meeting through the MAG website. Comments may be sent at any time leading up to the meeting, but must be received at least 1 hour prior to the posted start time for the meeting. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. MAG staff, have we received any public comments? If so, read them at this time.
Vice Chair, we have not received any public comments for this item or any other item on the agenda.
Thank you. Moving on to item 3 is the transportation staff report. MAG staff member Patrick Stone will now provide updates and a report to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the Street Committee. 2 items today to report on. First, we currently have a call for projects ongoing for systems management and operations, ITS type projects. $9.4 million is available in fiscal year 2025 funding. Those applications are due next year on Friday, January 13. I did want to note to the committee that there is a workshop for this call for projects tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Should any members of the committee be interested in that, certainly get with me after the meeting and I can provide the link to that workshop. And then second, we're the 2022 traffic counts. I sent an email out to members of the street committee last month on November 15th, identifying and providing those traffic counts. Requests are due into MAG by January 20th. And if you have any questions, you can certainly reach out to Wong on those. And with that, Mr. Vice Chair, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Patrick. Moving on to item 4, approval of minutes. Please take a few moments to review the minutes from the October 11th meeting if you have not already. I'll give you a few seconds here to take a look at those. Any member have any revisions? Being none, could I have a motion to recommend approval of the meeting minutes of October 11th, 2022?
Anderson, Youngtown, I shall move.
Thank you, Grant. A second?
Brad Novacek, Queen Creek, second.
Thank you, Brad. We have a motion and a second. We'll take a roll call now for the vote. When Steph calls your name, please indicate yay or nay.
Thank you. Starting with Grant Anderson.
Yay, A, yes.
Thank you. Charles Andrews,
A.
Keith Brown,
Yay.
Vice Chair Christo,
Yay.
Jerry Cooper,
Yay.
Maria Deeb.
Yes.
Thank you. Nathan Domi,
Yes.
David Fabiano.
Yes.
Thank you. Kevin Lair,
Yes.
Brad Novacek,
A.
Steve O'Brien,
Yes.
Dana Oziani.
Aye.
Thank you. Erman Pedrahita.
Yes.
Thank you. Matt Reed,
Aye.
Patrick Sage.
Yes.
Thank you. Ron Gritman for Christopher Salas.
Yes.
Thank you. Raquel Schatz.
Yes.
Thanks. Leticia Vargas.
Yes.
Thank you. And Christopher Wanamaker.
Yes.
Thanks. Is there anyone that I missed? All right, Vice Chair, this motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Staff, real quick, and Mr. Vice Chair, I apologize. I did want to note that Jennifer Jack has joined the meeting.
Oh, thank you.
Item number 5 is the project scope modification request for the City of Maricopa, Murphy and Hartman Roads project. This item will be presented by Patrick Stone, MAG Transportation Improvement Program Supervisor. This item is on the agenda for action. Patrick?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Again, members of the committee, good afternoon. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce Ms. Tammy Valadez Paz, Engineering Project Manager with the City of Maricopa. Ms. Paz will be presenting this item. Tammy, all yours.
Hi, thank you. And good afternoon, Vice Chair and members of the committee. As Patrick has already mentioned, my name is Tammy Valadez Paz. I'm an engineering project manager here at the City of Maricopa, and I'm going to go over the city's project scope modification request. Next slide, please. So project history. Murphy and Hartman roads are both unpaved roadways. City staff applied for MAG funding and was awarded the funding as part of the 2021 call for projects to pave Murphy and Hartman roads and replace the existing storm drain culverts. The original project application incorrectly identified a project paving 0.35 miles of Murphy Road north of Honeycutt Road. The City of Maricopa is requesting to modify the request to modify and requested the project limits on Murphy Road from 0.76 miles to 1.1 miles and begins at the northerly city limits, which is also the southerly boundary of the Gila River Indian community. And it continues down to Murphy Road. This request will extend the total project length from 1.27 miles to 1.6 miles And the city is also requesting the funding to be moved back 1 year from fiscal year 2023 to fiscal year 2024, which does not impact the project delivery currently scheduled for fiscal year 2025. Next slide, please. So actually, are we on slide 3 or 4? Okay, sorry. This slide just shows the new project limits for both Murphy and Hartman Road. Next slide, please. And this slide shows the tip modification summary for the project and how we're requesting to modify the limits and the work year. We wanted to thank you all for your support in this request, and I just was curious if anybody had any questions.
Are there any comments or questions from the committee members? Seeing none, could I have a motion to recommend approval of the project scope modification request for the City of Maricopa, Murphy and Hartman Roads?
Anderson, Youngtown, I so move.
Thank you, Grant. Can I have a second?
Second, Maria Deeb with the City of Mesa.
Thank you, Maria. Okay, we're going to take a roll call. When Steph calls your name, please indicate yay or nay.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Starting at the top, Grant Anderson,
Aye.
Charles Andrews,
Yay.
Keith Brown,
Yay.
Vice Chair, how do you vote?
Yay.
Thank you. Jerry Cooper,
Yay.
Maria Deeb,
Yay.
Nathan Domi,
Yay.
Keith Drewnowski.
Yay.
Thank you. David Fabiano,
Yay.
Jennifer Jack.
Yay.
Thank you. Kevin Lair,
Yay.
Brad Novacek,
Yay.
Steve O'Brien,
Yay.
Dana Oswiani.
Yay.
Thank you. Erman Pedrazita,
Yay.
Matt Reed,
Yay.
Patrick Sage,
Yay.
Ron Gritman,
Yes.
Raquel Shop,
Yes.
Leticia Vargas,
Yes.
Christopher Wanamaker.
Yes.
Is there anyone that I missed in the roll call? Vice Chair, this motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 6, the freeway pavement surface life cycle cost model review. This item will be presented by Arminta Syed, MAG Transportation Planner 3. This item is on the agenda for information and discussion. Ms. Syed?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Good afternoon, members of Street Committee. My name is Arminta Syed. I'm a Transportation Planner 3 at MAG, and I'm here today to provide an update on the Diamond Grind pilot program, specifically focusing on the life cycle cost evaluation piece. The pilot program is an initiative that MAG and ADOT partnered on and was approved by the MAG Regional Council in order to address the issue of the deteriorating freeway pavement surface that exists on our system today. Before I start, I just want to note that I'm joined in today's presentation by Troy Siglitz from Jacobs, who is the ADOT Management Consultant, and Charles Gerganis from Texas A&M Institute, or TTI, who led a MAG study related to this effort. Randy Everett, the ADOT Central District Administrator, will also be available at the end of our presentation if there are any specific questions for him. Next slide, please. So today I'll begin by providing an overview of the Diamond Grind pilot program and hopefully put into context how we got to this point and why we're here presenting this issue today. At that point, I'll turn it over to Troy to provide an overview of the ADOT cost evaluation effort before letting Charles take over to discuss his cost review effort. At that point, we'll conclude the presentation and take any questions. Because today's presentation specifically deals with detailed roadway unit costs, we thought this group would be a good place to provide this information, as most of you are likely familiar with a lot of the items we'll talk through, And hopefully the evaluation process we followed is one that will make sense to you. Next slide, please. Next slide. So the freeway system that exists in the Phoenix region is a relatively young one. It was really Prop 300 in 1985, which spurred the construction of the system that exists today. A lot of those freeways came online at the same time, and with that came the issue of noise concerns. It was so severe and it was so widespread that the governor at the time mandated that the freeways be covered with a layer of rubberized asphalt overlay on top of the new concrete in order to provide additional noise mitigation benefits. That became the regional standard. In fact, all freeway projects that are funded through our Freeway Lifecycle Program include a rubberized asphalt overlay in their project scope. This is an issue because the typical useful life for a rubberized asphalt overlay is about 10 years. Fast forward to today, and most of the region's freeway network is still covered with that original layer of rubberized asphalt because funding for replacement was only programmed through a freeway reconstruction project. In fact, over 50% of the existing freeway surface that exists today, shown here on this map in orange, is past its useful life, which causes major operational issues, including cracking, potholing, rutting, raveling, etc. And so now we're in the situation where we need to figure out how to address this deteriorating pavement surface region-wide. Next slide, please. So this led MAG and ADOT to partner on a study where several concrete-based alternatives were considered in comparison to rubberized asphalt, particularly in recognition of the significant near-term replacement needs and how costly that could potentially get. The results found that rubberized asphalt had the lowest service life and the highest associated costs. Based on these findings, direction was given to explore a concrete-based alternative by the MAG committees. Next slide, please. This led to the Diamond Grind pilot program that is currently in place today. Following the committee direction, MAG and ADOT selected 3 FLCP Freeway Lifecycle Program project candidates that would have their scopes revised to include a diamond grind pavement surface instead of the original rubberized asphalt overlay. These projects are reflected on this map in front of you and include Loop 101 Price from Baseline Road to Loop 202, Loop 101 Pima from I-17 to Pima Road, and finally Loop 101 Agua Fria from 75th Avenue to I-17. In June of 2020, the MAG Regional Council approved this pilot program with the understanding that the overall success would be evaluated based on 3 specific criteria: life cycle costs, quality of ride, and public acceptance of a ground concrete surface. Next slide, please. Since that approval, 2 of the 3 pilot projects have become active. So now there are a few different pavement surfaces that exist throughout the region's network. Most commonly, you have the typical rubberized asphalt surface shown in the picture on the left. Next to that in the middle is an example of diamond grind, where you mill off any existing layers of rubberized asphalt, and then you apply the diamond grind technique directly to the concrete below it, which creates these thin grooves that provide additional noise attenuation benefits, ride quality benefits, and others. And then the last example on the right-hand side is not something we would actually consider a finished pavement surface, but it does exist on our regional network today and has caused some confusion, so just wanted to provide a bit of clarification. This is considered a mill and leave treatment, which is sort of an in-between phase where any existing rubber asphalt overlay is milled off, but no new surface treatment has been applied. This has had to happen because of the situation I previously described, in which most of our freeway is deteriorating at a rapid rate, and there is no funding available simply for the replacement of the surface. Situations like this will keep occurring unless we're able to address this issue. Next slide, please. So in addition to the 2 completed pilot projects, which include the segments on Loop 101 Pima and Loop 101 Price, additional ADOT funded pavement rehab projects have also come online, which incorporate the diamond grind treatment. And that has allowed us the opportunity to further evaluate the success of this option. Part of this included developing a comprehensive life cycle cost comparison model. An update on these results, in addition to the other evaluation findings, were provided to TPC in February earlier this year. At that time, committee members asked us to provide further detail on the cost results. In addition to providing a breakdown of the costs included in the model, we were also asked to consider the impact of changing our base assumptions. So things like, would the results be the same if we aligned our assumptions with peer agency best practices? Or how would the total cost estimates be affected if certain maintenance regimens added additional years to the overall useful life assumption? Or what if by directly trafficking the pavement surface, additional maintenance practices are required, therefore adding to the total cost estimate? Next slide, please. Based on the feedback provided, MAG initiated a pavement surface peer region analysis with TTI. Part of this effort included conducting an independent review of the ADOT lifecycle cost model, taking the TPC feedback into consideration. Our goal was to account for these dynamic inputs to see if the results differed significantly from the ADOT lifecycle cost model results. We were not looking to use the TTI review to provide updated estimates, but rather validate the results from the ADOT model. Next slide, please. So now we've completed several cost evaluation efforts and would like to walk you through the details today as requested by TPC earlier this year. First, we have the original ADOT lifecycle cost model, which is what we presented earlier this year. Since we were asked to go back and provide additional details anyway, we also took this opportunity to update the ADOT model in order to use the latest cost data available. This is the second effort listed on the screen in front of you, which is really the same as the first, but just using 2022 data. And then finally, we have the TTI cost model review, which was completed in parallel with updating the ADOT lifecycle model. At this point, I'll turn it over to Troy, who led the development of the ADOT cost model, to first walk us through the ADOT lifecycle cost model before turning it over to Charles, who'll wrap things up today by going over the TTI review. Troy?
Thank you, Arminta. Next slide, please. And one more, please. So thank you, Arminta, Vice Chairman, members of the Streets Committee. You may recall that back in the fall of last year, ADOT worked with MAG to develop the comprehensive cost analysis that Arminta referenced earlier and was presented earlier this year to TPC. That analysis compared the total life cycle cost between rubberized asphalt and diamond grind. And we did look at that and carried that model all the way out to the year 2050. We looked at various things, including the capital costs, which would be your initial construction cost, as well as the incremental construction costs that would be required after the service life is reached for the given pavement surface type. And then we also looked at the maintenance costs that would be an annual or incremental cost that would be required just to keep the surface in a reasonable and good operating condition. And then finally, we did look at the future capacity improvements that are requested or included as part of the extension of the Proposition 400. And so what we did was we developed not only the analysis based on the existing system, but we also looked at what the future system is going to be and how those are implemented over the 25-year life cycle. Next slide, please. So this is these are the results that were presented last year, or I'm sorry, at TPC earlier this year, but were prepared last year. As you can see on the right, when we presented this initially, we showed that the difference in cost over the 25-year life cycle between diamond grind and rubberized asphalt revealed that rubberized asphalt over time would cost about 1.5 billion times more than diamond grind. And what you see over there, the chart on the left, what that shows is it shows, and we'll explain this a little bit more, that over time, you see the cumulative difference in cost. So the orange represents the diamond grind and the green represents the rubberized asphalt. So you can see over time, rubberized asphalt ends up incrementally becoming more and more expensive. Next slide, please. So since the last cost model was developed late last year, we have more data available to us. So we have 2 different projects that were recently advertised for construction. We have a project on I-10 between Avondale and I-17. This was a diamond grind project. It's since been awarded to a contractor, constructed, and is complete. And then we also have the Dunlap Avenue to Deer Valley Road project on I-17, which is currently under construction. Those are both diamond grind projects. And so what we did was we took that information, the bid data that was available to us, and we updated the life cycle cost model in order to be more realistic compared to today's costs. So we are looking at 2022 dollars. We also reviewed what was included in those projects and wanted to develop a total project cost that was realistic, so a contractor or ADOT could develop the project from beginning to end, including all design costs and other costs included. Next slide, please. So what this slide represents is it represents what's typically included in a pavement surface rehabilitation cost. So these are costs that are included, whether it's a rubberized asphalt rehabilitation project or a diamond grind project. The only real difference is that if you're going from a rubberized asphalt surface to a diamond grind surface, then you would initially mill off the existing rubberized asphalt, and then you would diamond grind the surface below. If it is a rubberized asphalt project, then a lot of the same costs are included as well. So we'll just go through some of these real quick. So along the main line, that's where you would do your rubberized asphalt or diamond grind surface. So some of the things that would be included in that project are things like underlying repairs that need to be made to the concrete. So if there's a pothole or a spall or a slab that's got severe cracking and needs to be replaced, those things would be done whether it's a diamond grind project or a rubberized asphalt project. Other things we have to consider as part of the total project cost are traffic control during construction. So the costs associated with putting up the signs or doing a lane closure or a freeway closure overnight, all of those costs are part of it. And then mobilizing the contractor to the site. So the startup costs for the contractor, both administrative, mobilizing to the site, all of those things add to the project cost. Also looking at crack repairs. So if there's any underlying crack that needs to be done, repaired, that work is also included. So when we look at the freeway ramps, there's actually 2 types of surfaces that we have on our freeway system. Some of the ramp surfaces are, most of the ramp surfaces include concrete that goes down a portion of the ramp. And then as you approach the crossroad, you've got sections that are an asphalt concrete section. And so what that is that the total depth of the paved surface is asphalt. There's no underlying concrete. And so as part of a typical pavement rehabilitation process, you would do a mill and overlay of that existing asphalt concrete surface so that when you're finished, the entire section of freeway as well as the ramp is left in a smooth, rideable surface. And then finally, we also do have to look at bridge decks and what's going on up there. A lot of times you've got joint repairs that need to take place, and a lot of those are done during a pavement preservation or a diamond grind or a rubberized asphalt project. And so those are the total capital costs that are included in a typical diamond grind or rubberized asphalt project. Next slide, please. So this slide just represents what the surface treatments include. So the picture on the left is just a milling machine milling off the existing rubberized asphalt, and then that would be what would be overlaid with new rubberized asphalt. So that's just a picture. And then on the right, we've got two graphics, one that shows a diamond grind directly on PCCP. So what that shows is that after you would diamond grind, or I'm sorry, mill off the existing rubberized asphalt, you would then go over on top of that and surface treat that with a diamond grind. And what that does is, as Armenta mentioned earlier, it creates a smoother, quieter surface right directly on the concrete. And then the graphic below that shows a typical rubberized asphalt replacement over PCCP. So similar to the picture on the left, you would grind off the rubberized asphalt, and then you would lay down new rubberized asphalt, leaving another smooth, rideable, quieter surface. Next slide, please. So moving into how we did this more current life cycle cost analysis. So the table on the right shows the typical per lane mile total estimated project cost for diamond grinding existing concrete. These costs represent all of the construction and administrative elements that would be included in a diamond grind project. These costs are based on recent bid data for projects within the MAG region. And the costs include construction, design, contingencies, and other project related costs. The $280,000 at the end represents a per lane mile cost. The cost assumes that there is an existing rubberized asphalt surface that would need to be removed prior to diamond grinding the underlying concrete pavement. If a pavement section does not have an existing rubberized pavement overlay, so if it's just concrete today, then the per lane mile cost would be reduced to 213, since there's no longer a need to mill off the existing rubberized asphalt. And that's important to note in our cost model. When you reach the service life 15 years, we no longer have to worry about milling off the existing asphalt, rubberized asphalt, because it's already gone and with a diamond grind surface. And so it's anticipated that the diamond ground surface would have a service life of about 15 years before a second diamond grind would be needed. And the annual maintenance activities would include concrete spall repairs. So similar, like I was telling you earlier, if there's a small piece of concrete that breaks off, we need to go in and fill that in and make it a nice smooth surface again. And so that would be done annually. And then after 15 years, as I mentioned, you don't have to do the milling anymore. I would like to just note that 15 years is a relatively conservative estimate. The diamond ground surface may actually last longer than 15 years, and so you could potentially get longer service life out of that diamond grind before you have to go in and do it again.
Troy, this is David Fabiano Gilbert. Quick question. 2022 bid data, is this from the two projects that you referenced earlier, or the three projects you referenced earlier on the 101?
Vice Chair, members of the committee, yes, it is. We use the I-10 project that we discussed, and we also use the I-17 that's currently under construction right now as the basis. Okay, next slide, please. So this is a similar typical per lane mile total cost that was discussed with diamond grind, but now we're looking at rubberized asphalt. This would include milling off the existing rubberized asphalt and replacing it with a new rubberized asphalt overlay. This is estimated to cost about $298,000 and includes per lane mile and includes the same below the line items discussed earlier. The cost also includes spall, crack, and slab repairs needed for the underlying concrete, which is still going to be needed even if you have a rubberized asphalt overlay. The service life for rubberized asphalt is assumed to be about 10 years. And typical best practice maintenance activities in order to achieve the 10 years would include 3 fog coat seals and 1 crack seal during the service life interval. So within those 10 years, we would see 3 fog seals and 1 crack seal. Next slide, please. So what this slide represents is it represents the updated cost model. So as you can see, although the costs have increased with the revised analysis, we still found that rubberized asphalt will cost about $1.5 billion more than diamond grind through the 2050 year life that we discussed. The total rubberized asphalt cost would be about $3.9 billion, whereas the diamond grind cost would be approximately $2.4 billion. So that's how we get that $1.5 billion difference. One thing that you will notice on the table to the left, or the bar chart to the left, is that the incremental costs are much closer for the beginning 10 years. And then once you get to that 11th year, that's where you have to go back in and do that rubberized asphalt mill and overlay again. And then once you get to 15 years, you see a little bit of a jump in the diamond grind cost in the orange. And that's because at that 15th year, after the 15th year, we would go in and diamond grind again. And so then when you get to that following service life interval with rubberized asphalt, again, you see a big jump there. And so the net result is about a $1.5 billion difference between rubberized asphalt and diamond grind. So now I'll turn the presentation over to Charles Garganis with TTI to discuss the peer analysis of the cost model.
Hey, Charles, you're muted. Sorry.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Arminta. Thank you, Troy. And thank you, Mr. Vice Chair and members of the Street Committee. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide, if you don't mind. So we took the Jacobs model and we used I want to make sure I clear something up on the front end. We used the list of projects provided by MAG and then the Jacobs model unit cost that they had already produced. And so most of our life cycle cost analysis and review dealt with the other assumptions that go into the model, particularly those that Arminta mentioned earlier today, which included, should we include the dynamic nature of life and not just use a discrete value for the life of each treatment? And then if we apply a maintenance technique, should we also assume that we get some additional life to a treatment? And I'll discuss both of those a little bit more in just a few minutes. Before I get to that, I'd like to mention that we visited with California, Nevada, Utah, New Mexico, Texas, and Virginia about their experiences with open graded friction courses, not necessarily rubberized asphalt, because not all of them use rubberized asphalt or liquid rubber binders in their HMAs, but all of them do have experience using open graded friction courses. We also discussed with them assumptions for pavement, the treatment life, along with different maintenance practices that were used for both open graded friction courses and concrete, diamond ground concrete surfaces. And we did this to validate the assumptions that Jacobs used in their model, along with making additional suggestions on how these should become probabilistic or dynamic in a new probabilistic model, which we also built, and I'll discuss the logic with that model moving forward. Next slide, please. So this is the cost model review, and what I'll do is I'll briefly touch on what we learned from some of our peer agencies as I go through this logical structure of a probabilistic model we built. So much of the freeway system that you have has a rubberized asphalt surface. And that asphalt surface has to be obviously replaced either with a rubberized overlay or a diamond ground surface. And so in a probabilistic model, we built an option for it to run through a loop that says, okay, given an existing asphalt surface, how old is that asphalt surface? Should it be replaced? If not, the model waits until it needs to be replaced. It then, once it comes time for that rubberized asphalt surface to be replaced, it selects either to replace it with another rubberized overlay or replace it with a diamond ground surface. You can see the assumptions that we built into our model, which look similar to particularly the mean values look similar to the Jacobs model. Let me touch on a little bit of what we learned from our peer agencies. In terms of mean life of asphalt rubberized overlays or open graded friction course overlays, 10 years turns out to be a reasonable life for an open graded friction course. New Mexico indicated a life of 10 to 15 years. Virginia indicated a life of 10 plus years. Texas, a life of 10 to 12 years, with some overlays being in service for more than 15 years. Nevada gave a broad range of 10 to 20 years. Utah indicated a life of 10 to 12 years, but also indicated that after 12 years, they're seeing fairly rapid deterioration of their rubberized overlays, needing replacement quickly once they get to that end of life, almost like there's a little bit of a cliff that they hit, and then they really need to replace. Caltrans provided the lowest service life of a 5 to 10 year service life. So we discovered that there's a lot of variability out there, and we wanted to make sure we captured this in a probabilistic model. And so if the selection chooses a rubberized overlay replacement, it uses a mean life of 10 years, which is the life expectancy currently used in Arizona and falls within the range of most peer review agencies. We selected a standard deviation of 1.29 years, and then we put a short life cutoff in place of 8 years. What this means is that 98% of our overlays die, so to speak, within 13 years, but we don't let any overlay have a life of less than 8 years, just from the practical nature of it. And that standard deviation could have the potential to drive some very short life overlays. So we artificially cut that off. So let's stick with the rubberized overlay option for a minute. If the project is going to be replaced with a rubberized asphalt overlay, it goes through a maintenance regimen where, with equal probability, it either selects to perform maintenance on the rubberized overlay or not perform maintenance. The assumption behind this is that sometimes we defer maintenance on our infrastructure assets because we live in a fiscally constrained environment, or maybe that asset is performing in a performing superiorly, it's outpacing expectations. So sometimes we don't conduct the maintenance regimen that we would typically say would be the ideal regimen that we should perform. For example, the 3 fog seals and the crack seal to get 10 years worth of life out of a rubberized overlay. So the probabilistic model selects at 50-50, either do maintenance or don't do maintenance. Now, if we tie that back to what our peer agencies doing in terms of maintenance on open graded friction course, very few are performing maintenance on those friction courses, because what we discovered is many other agencies really appreciate the splash and spray reduction properties that come with open graded friction courses. Obviously not necessarily a huge concern for you there in the Valley, but it is for a lot of other places, especially places like Texas and Virginia. Even New Mexico indicated this. And by fog sealing those open graded friction courses, you significantly impact the permeability, especially in the short term. And if you were to have multiple fog seals on it, you could completely eliminate the splash and spray benefits that you get from an open graded friction course, like your asphalt rubberized overlays. So there's not a lot in the way of maintenance out there except for emergency patching and that sort of thing. But what we did in our model is we said 50-50, select maintenance, don't select maintenance. And if it does select maintenance, it then selects either with equal probability in that bin of either a low maintenance regimen, a medium maintenance regimen, and a high maintenance regimen. The low maintenance regimen was just a single fog seal. The medium maintenance regimen was a crack seal fog seal, and the high was the 3 fog seals and the crack seal as programmed in the Jacobs model. But what we also did differently was, if you select a maintenance action, it extends the service life of those overlays. So if you apply a low maintenance regimen, you get 2 additional years. Medium, you get 3, and high, you get 5. So the probabilistic model says, oh, if we choose maintenance and we invest in our maintenance, we expect that we will get additional years beyond what the mean life was pulled out of the distribution. So we're giving ourselves credit for performing that maintenance. And so it loops through that entire iteration and builds a histogram, which we'll take a look at here in just a few minutes. The right side of the model obviously is to replace with a diamond grind surface. And again, we went with a mean life of 15 years, which is what the Jacobs model is using. We use the same standard deviation and we set a low end cutoff of 12 years. Now, in reality, when we looked at peer agencies, there's not a lot of information out there on the mean life of diamond grind overlays, especially not in the way that you would initially use it there in the valley. Oftentimes, roadways have to be reground because of additional faulting. So they might choose to grind that concrete pavement because they're having faulting problems at their joints. And they come back to regrind because of faulting issues, not necessarily to reestablish texture for the diamond grinding. And in fact, there's some studies that suggest that if you have a very hard, high quality aggregate in your concretes, that you might be able to expect 20 plus years in your diamond ground surfaces. And some Nevada has indicated that they have seen this in Utah as well. Utah in particular at plus 20 years, especially where they don't experience significant studded tire issues. Studded tires kind of, they certainly impact the life you get out of a diamond ground surface. But that 15-year value, like Troy already mentioned, is a fairly conservative estimate for the mean life of diamond grinding. And then, so if it selects diamond grind, it also goes into this maintenance regimen. And there it links back to this annual cost of directly trafficking the concrete surface. What we did in our model that was slightly different than the Jacobs model is we took a look at the age of that original concrete surface. And we said, okay, the older that age gets, the more likely it is that additional maintenance will be required on that concrete surface. And so we took it into a low, medium, and high regimen of maintenance or surface repairs required on the diamond ground concrete surface. And we based it on the age of the existing PCCP that was out there. So that if you had something very young, like say a 15-year-old PCCP, the likelihood of it having extensive or significant cost to repair that surface would be much different than some of your PCCP surfaces that have been out there since the 60s. Next slide, please. So hopefully that made some sense. And if you bottle all of that up and you go through all of the iterations with it, you can produce histograms and CDFs or cumulative distribution functions, and we'll cap it off with that. This is just a summary of the findings to 2050 for our probabilistic life cycle model. The top is replacing overlay with overlay. And the mean value from our iterations of the model was 3.6 billion. The bottom histogram is the diamond grind histogram. The mean value from that was 2.7 billion. So we were right, our model was right at $1 billion difference between diamond grind and asphalt overlay between now and 2050. To carry a point forward that Troy has already made, as you start to extend your horizon on what you're looking at, the discrepancy or the difference between those two options grows, with the difference growing to 1.3 billion between the means at 2060. And that is because the region will again face another event where it's looking to have to replace those overlays with another overlay, and the diamond grind does not yet need to be replaced. Next slide, please. So in summary, hopefully that made some sense, where we took some feedback from peer regions, combined it with what ADOT is doing, and used the foundational structure of what Jacobs had built to then build in some dynamic nature of both the life of the surface treatment that being the existing surface treatment and the treatments that replace it, as well as considering how maintenance might change the life of it and how that maintenance should be programmed in with some variable nature. And then I showed you the histograms, but I think one of the questions that often comes up with histograms is, well, what happens near the tails? Is there ever a scenario where the cost of diamond grind begins to overlap the cost of open graded rubberized asphalt at the tails? Next slide, please. We created some cumulative distribution functions that hopefully show this for you. What you're looking at here is the 90th percentile from our model for replacing with diamond grind was roughly 2.73 billion. The 10th percentile for replacing overlay with overlay was almost 3.5 billion, essentially meaning that at the extreme tails, the highest cost scenarios for diamond grind and the lowest cost scenarios for rubberized asphalt still remain $700 million apart, where diamond grind is still almost $750 million less than rubberized asphalt. So after we pulled all of this together and we stepped back and look at our results, compared that with the results from Jacobs, they seem to be tracking nicely, and our probabilistic and dynamic inputs to the model seem to validate the assumptions used by Jacobs initially. So with that, Arminta, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you again for the invitation, Mr. Vice Chair and Streets Committee.
Thanks, Charles. So that concludes our presentation today. The key thing to note here is that the dynamic assumptions that we included as part of the TTI review are not really applicable to the MAG region. We only took them into account to illustrate the impact as requested by TPC members. And even still, the impact or the delta between the two pavement costs are still within the same magnitude as found using the ADOT cost model. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair and members of the Street Committee, for your time today. Just a reminder that this item is on the agenda for information and discussion, and we stand ready to answer any questions.
Are there any comments or questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you, Arminta, Troy, and Charles, for the presentation.
I do have a question.
Sorry.
Sorry. This is,
Go ahead, Maria.
this is Maria with the City of Mesa. Thank you all that presented. I'm assuming that this study is to determine cost-wise if it's better to use rubberized asphalt or diamond grinding. You presented a very good model for quantitative costs, but I would like, in terms of my community, to see qualitative issues being addressed, such as availability and workforce knowledge, quality of ride, and quality of noise, not only in terms of decibels, but also the wide range of that noise. Aesthetics becomes very important sometimes, climate impacts and environmental impacts, and lastly, community acceptance for this project. So I just wanted to put forward what I also think should be addressed in any cost model, not only quantitative, but also qualitative.
Thank you, Ms. Steve, members of the Street Committee. The Diamond Grind Pilot Program, when it does get evaluated, will be evaluated based on a comprehensive criteria that include those factors that you listed. Today, specifically, want to focus a little bit on the cost option, but certainly don't want that to be the only evaluation criteria. So completely agree with you there. Thank you for your comments.
Are there any other questions? Maria, you still have your hand up. You have another question?
No, I'll lower the hand.
Thank you. Okay, no other questions. We'll move on to item number 6, requests for future agenda items. Are there any requests?
Troy, that boom, I get talking to the wrong person. I'm sorry, Bryce. David Fabiano, Town of Gilbert.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Arminta, thank you for the presentation, Troy and Charles. A couple of questions. Charles, one of the things I was wondering about, in your analysis, did you look at any of the, is the structural section of the pavements, are they comparable? Is a question, because if they're not comparable, were there any sort of normalizing factors that you applied to your model? And then for Troy, one of the things you had shown in your cost model was $200 million over that life cycle for operations, and it was consistent in both scenarios. I'm just curious what that was for. Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Fabiano and Mr. Vice Chair and members of the street committee. So from a pavement structure perspective, we just assumed the minimum 9-inch PCCP or thicker with the AC or the rubberized overlay over the top of it, and did not normalize for any difference in structure and how that might lead to additional maintenance costs once you directly traffic it. To be 100% transparent, I'm not 100% sure that we have enough data to truly know the thickness of all of those PCCPs out there, but that could be on me. If it is, I apologize. I will say, though, that you bring up a good point in terms of diamond grinding. And obviously, if you move in that direction, you do begin to have to consider how many grinds you can have before it does impact either structure or approach rebar, depending on what your pavement structure looks like. And Missouri in particular has begun increasing the thickness of its concrete pavements in anticipation of multiple grindings in the future. So just as a point of knowledge there, others are conscientious of that. So I don't know if I gave you a good answer or not, Mr. Fabiano, but I'll be glad to answer more if I can.
I think Arizona uses 11 inches, I think, which is a little bit heavier than what is typical, and that the repair frequencies that you were showing in there for some of the underlying deficiencies that would impact or cause changes is why, again, that's the question, because I think there's a difference, and just being able to make sure that there's a normalization that occurs there in some way, shape, or form. Thank you.
Valid point. Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions from committee members? I'll try to do a better job of looking at hands this time. Seeing none, I think, yes. Let's move on to item number 6, requests for future agenda items. Are there any requests by a street committee member for an item on a future agenda? Seeing none, move on to item number 7, updates from member agencies. I would like to invite any members to share information related to ongoing street-related project activity. David.
This is Brad Novacek, Town of Queen Creek. I would like to report that we had an opening of Meridian Road, and you can now take Meridian Road in cooperation with Mesa. You can and Pinal County. You can take Meridian Road from the 24 all the way down to Combs Road. In many cases, that road didn't even exist here not too long ago. And so we've had some good response there. And Maria, I don't want to steal anything from Mesa for you. Is it all right if I mention Signal Butte opening up on Wednesday?
No, please do. That was going to be my update, but go ahead, please.
All right. I wanted to mention in conjunction with Mesa, Signal Butte Road has been being improved from Williamsfield Road down to Germain, and that is opening up this Wednesday morning. So we're all looking forward to that because it gives another route for traffic to work its way through the street network and hopefully not cause as many backups on those few roads that used to be the main routes in this area.
Thank you, Brad. Maria, do you want to add to that?
Yes, I also want to mention that Mesa Drive Phase 2, that is all the way from 8th Street to Main, will be completed. We opened the road for traffic, but will be actually completed come December. Well, the end of December, we're already in December. Also, Southern and Stapley, that was an intersection improvement, not only capacity, but also safety. We had safety funds, HSIP for that. It is also going to be totally wrapped up at the end of December. And as Brad mentioned, Signal Butte is one of our most important projects because we wanted to not only address some of the influx coming from the new open of SR 24, but also assist and address some of the mobility and connectivity issues with Queen Creek. So we're very happy that that project is wrapped up. As Brad said, tomorrow there will be an opening. Thanks.
Thank you, Maria. David?
Thank you very much, Bryce. My team's going through the capital plan for the update, just turned it in a couple months back. Just sort of the nature of the business and some of the wrestle that we all are going through. We have a general obligation bond that was approved by voters in November of 2021 that anticipated about $500 million in improvements. Those costs between when that was began in 2018 versus where we're at now, it's closer to $800 million instead of $500 million. So we're having some significant challenges with the cost of infrastructure, capital infrastructure, and don't necessarily have an answer for it. But transportation continues to be extremely important for our community and our region, and the ability to fund it fully and appropriately, that challenge continues to grow even more severe. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, David. Seeing no other hands, the next meeting date for the street committee will be Tuesday, January 10th, 2023 at 1:00 p.m. via teleconference. Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
You have a motion to end the meeting?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second, so the meeting is adjourned at 2:01 p.m. Thank you, everybody.